Hello everyone, this is Christina Wallis and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I upload tutorials on how to make flowers with your own hand out of cold porcelain or sugar. Today I'm going to show you how to make this two-tone rose. In fact, it's not too much of a tutorial, it's more of a demo or even just a learning curve, an exploration of how to use two mediums of undried petals and paint and all of those complicated things together, which ideally shouldn't really be going together because they make life more difficult. But before we jump into it though, I would like to mention that this video today is sponsored by Skillshare, an online learning community, which we're going to come back to later. But for now, let's start on that rose. So initially I wanted to go with the largest rose possible, but this one I made out of different rose, and so actually it made more sense to go with this one, which I made out of the very rose that inspired this project. And here I'm digging out my FMM cutters to find the ones that fit the job, and there is one that I'm going to use that's a cookie cutter, a bit thick to cut with. Hopefully I'll get away with it. And yeah, it just wasn't the right cutter. Just a bit of a disclosure, the FMM cutters were sent for free to me, and I think they're excellent to use as long as you find the right size and shape that fits your job, since they don't have a huge variety of cutters. And this one is a foil shaper to dry the existing petal in so that it holds the shape and doesn't go flat. I've used a cheap foil because I find that it tends to repeat the shape a little bit better. So I'm making this demo because I was really inspired by the flower, made a mold out of it and want to test it out, but also I want to try out mixing my cold porcelain with deco clay. By the way, I've added a bit of yellow here just to take off the whiteness. So yes, the deco clay, I'm adding a fifth of the clay deco clay into my cold porcelain just to see the effect, to see if it works for the rose of this sort, because it takes off the shininess, adds whiteness, and it makes the whole rose less transparent. I have found that it really didn't work for my David Austin rose. I hated it, in fact, but it did work for apple before, so we'll see how it works for this particular rose. And I'm afraid that technically, so far, I am terribly unimpressed. Although the two clays mix together really nicely, now I'm rolling it out and it's a nightmare. It really is very, very sticky. So the rolling out is harder than self-made clay, which is not great, seeing that it's, you know, a lot more expensive. So yeah, not at all impressed. It does roll very thin, on the other hand, but yeah, it's just really a hard work. Let's see how it textures anyway. I found an interesting thing. If you add deco to any clay, it takes a presence. For example, the edges, you can't probably see it here, but when they don't never really quite as sharp as what they are with cold porcelain alone. So I use wet brush sometimes, slightly wet brush, to kind of smoothen them. And then I also thin these petals on my hand, because I find that if I thin them on spongy mat, then the petal itself becomes a touch spongy. It kind of assimilates the background. So now let's get veining. I'm putting a bit of petal base on my veiner, since shininess is not actually an issue with this particular clay, and see how I'm pushing the bottom of my cutout right against the bottom of the veiner. This is as well to make best of its shape. I'm very happy with this veiner, I must admit, although it could have been bigger, but the rose was really not very good. And I couldn't find a nice petal to make a bigger bigger veiner. Anyway, so apply even pressure across your veiner, and so what I'm going to do, I'm going to carefully open it. It's all good, as you can see. And now I'm going to really carefully remove my shape from the bottom of the veiner so that a little bit of air gets in it. And then I'm going to place it over the top of the round side of it, the other side of the veiner, and let it dry there for a couple of minutes, just so the shape sets. And while the shape is setting, shall we have a quick look at the Skillshare again? You gotta say, what a time to be considering cost-effective, a platform with thousands and thousands of quality courses on it. And with this huge chunk of time suddenly falling on our hands for the first time in our lives, perhaps for the last time, I just thought I'd put a quick pick and mix of courses that Skillshare offers to hopefully relay the vastness and the variety of it, and bring on your radar perhaps courses that you haven't even considered or haven't thought could be made into courses, but which would strike a chord with you and bring something really useful on your radar. Now, starting with my favorite one, I would love to do animation. And who wouldn't like to be a writer for a day to try it out? Now, I wouldn't like to sort out my Instagram feed, as in the mess always has been. And this is oven dry polymer clay, the other side of it, of the matter. And some silicone here, some silicone information, and some ideas for budding YouTubers. And here we have some organization and self-development for artists, and some more mystery of Instagram. Yes. And of course, can never have enough motivation or enough backdrops for that matter. So Skillshare is offering first 2 months for absolutely free to the first 500 of my viewers to take them up on their membership offer. Now, their membership only costs about £10 a month as per annual subscription, and does seem to be a good cost-effective tool for personal development. Now, for those of you who do want to try it out, please make sure you use the link below this video, link in the description. Thank you. Okay, so this veiner would really work best for the rose it was made out of. When you really see the vein when the rose is still quite closed up. But running slightly ahead of myself, it's not actually going to work out quite that way for a variety of reasons. But anyway, for now I'm going to show you how to recondition the clay. It dries out so quickly, this mix, worse than if I'd have added paint to it, which is unusual. So yeah, so I've added a bit of water, then at the very end I add a touch of Nivea, and normally I half it with a fresh clay. And here we go, me using a cookie cutter, thinking that I'm going to get completely stuck with it because it's thicker and it cuts out just fine. Maybe, again, it's the Deco clay that made it a little bit softer. By the way, you don't have to use Deco, you could use Artista, and there are other, soft Modena Soft as well. It's just that spongy, marshmallowy type of clay. Right, so this is a smaller size. If you pushed it towards the front, then you would get more of a kind of texture at the front. So it's up to you, and that's the difference in sizes. It would be, you will see what I mean about pointing out difference in sizes when I will be putting the rows together. So I'm going to be using the dry brush technique, where I dip my my cheap Primark brush in the paint, then brush it off over the paper, most of it, and with what's remaining I then go over my petal. This petal is semi-dry, so pay attention to how I hold it. It's very hard to hold it, not squish it, not to get it dirty with paint if you do more than one petal, and not to over dry it. The list of problems goes on and on and on. So yeah, try not to squish it too much and keep to the original shape, because although it kind of set in the original shape, if I keep flattening it over the paper, then it would get flatter, drier, and less texturous as well. So yes, I'm doing this in real time. And although, as I said, my Primark brush is very cheap, it's actually, to me, it seems it's doing quite a good job. So I've really got rid of all the paint for the first layer, and now I'm doing second layer with slightly more paint. I just like the effect, the halo effect it seemed to give me. Okay, and so now I'm going to go double speed. So you don't think that you have to be quite this fast. And now what I'm doing here, I'm adding a third layer of slightly darker color to the very edges, and I think that works really well. And here, look, I've turned it around, and I'm kind of having to hold it in the middle, but I'm not pressing my thumb, pressing my finger rather, in very hard, not to interfere with the petal as much as possible. See, so, but I'm still having to kind of hold it to apply my colors evenly. So yeah, obviously you're gonna have to try not to make the line hard, so soften the line when it ends, but at the same time don't let your line go on and on all the way to the inside. This rose has the characteristics of having a very bright line, the halo line I call it, but it doesn't go into the rest of the petal a lot at all, like it tends to be with other styles of roses. Excuse my finger, it's as always I have scratches or cuts on my fingers. I just seem to be quite clumsy. Right, so here we go. There's two slightly different, they don't have to be identical in my view. So if you're aiming for that classic closed rose shape, then you would need much larger ball than this one I have, by the way. It's difficult to, you know, not to make all the petals dirty and all sorts, but and keep your shape to the shape, but the painting itself is not difficult. Anyway, so by now my petals are a lot drier than they should be, and I have really struggled to put it to shape. Now my center here is very small, so forget having that nice closed rose as on the one that I'm copying, but I'm not a huge fan of those roses. I just wanted to try out the technique, but for what it's worth, I've realized that I didn't even have a big enough ball, and I couldn't be bothered to kind of make it larger because my petals were drying out way too fast, unexpectedly fast, and I was just getting a bit annoyed. Now I might revisit it, that closed rose, because it's challenging technically, although I don't particularly like it. It's not easy to make actually, but for now we're just going to stick to whatever it is that I'm doing here. I think it did give us a nice little rose, especially for cakers. A closed rose is not all that great. So look at this. This is important how I kind of cross over the initial two. It seemed to work well for many roses, like this. And I'm going to leave a link. In this case, I will not forget, I have done, a couple of years ago, I have done a rosebud using self-made clay that didn't dry on me like crazy, and it's that particular video really shows what you could do with a clay that it's not drying. You just have to have a initial shape underneath and then mold your leaves around it, but they're not molding here. I don't know where this rose is going actually, so not behaving itself at all. So I'm adding a bit of clay to start adding on the following layers. So again, rushing ahead of myself, I'm going to tell you that this rose is going to have two initial petals just now, and then 3 lots of 3, and then 3 at the end, so 14 petals. So yeah, very easy on petals. It just yeah, they were a nightmare to kind of roll, so I've given up quickly enough. So here we go. So I am pinching the very bottom here, so that's the outside side of a rose, but it's going to be hidden in layers, and I'm not even bothering to do this in single petals. I'm going to do it in lots of 3 because they dry quickly and they're driving me mad. I'm going to stop moaning, I promise. But yeah, so but that's what you do if you know, pinching it didn't work, too dry by far. So I've decided to give it a little cut, and that's a little cheat really for you, for your roses, to get the right shape of them really. So So yeah, so far I would say that I'm loving the effect. It just went so easy, giving it this lovely shade. But yeah, putting it together is proving to be a little bit challenging, but I suspect it had something to do with my deco clay that I was mixing in being like 2 years old or something. So I was kind of flogging a dead horse there, really. Anyway, so that's the first step, and now I'm doing the second lot of tree. So this is what cold porcelain does. You can bend it nicely. But yeah, so this is a nice middle, isn't it? So easy to do. So something for future reference, really, if someone likes that look. And I'm trying to pinch it, and yeah. So I'm applying glue to the first lot of petals. These 3 petals are attached together, but not a lot of glue going on. So although I add glue to the first load of petals, the rest of them are kind of just hanging out in the air, so you could open them, bend them, do all sorts of things with them. And yeah, and anticipating the question, where do I attach the second lot of 3 petals, just look around and see where they would look the best. There is no, because this rose is working out to be really casual, there is no hard and fast rules in it. Excuse me. And in general, I mean, the best way to make roses that resonate with your temperament and your taste is just to let it go and get the skills first, get some basic at least skills, and then just let it go and keep adding bits that you like, seeing, checking every step, and tailoring, basically tailoring, excuse me, tailoring your flower exactly to your taste, seeing if you like the proportions, seeing if you like the angles or where things are going, and listening out to your intuition. So if you don't like something, perhaps take it off and continue in slightly different direction, because you would have wasted then a lot more time if you don't, or at least that's how I see it. Obviously there are other aspects like deadlines and so on. And here we go, this is what we ended up having, and I love all these colors. I think they are very nice. The rose actually looks delicate. It was well worth the effort. Have a go making one of those. This is the next day video, by the way. And yeah, I do love the colors. They look just as good off video in 3D. So have a go at making it with sugar, clay, whatever. Self-made clay would be good for it. And I hope you all staying safe and looking after yourself. I'll see you sometime soon. Have a lovely weekend.